Welcome, Bronco Nation, to the bowl preview for Boise State versus UCLA. This is, of course, an exciting video because, kind of like the Mountain West Championship preview video, it's not one that we were 100% sure we were going to be able to make. Boise State was sitting at a point in the season where there was some serious discussion that they may not make bowl eligibility. And now here we sit. Not only are they bowl eligible, but they're Mountain West champions playing in the highest bowl game available to the Mountain West, outside, of course, the Group of Fives, access to the New Year's Six, and a chance to face a Pac-12 team in UCLA. Boise State 8-5, which may seem, if you're just kind of coming into the Boise State season fresh with no outside perspective of what's gone on, like a little bit of a disappointing year, but it has not been a disappointing end to the season. That 8-5, which we will talk about, is a great record for Boise State. The fact that they're able to sit here with that record and play in this game versus a 7-5 UCLA team that had a little bit of a different start and end of their season. And we'll talk about that as well and what this game means for them. This is the Starco Brands LA Bowl, A.K.A The Gronk Bowl. Gronk is going to be the announcer for this one, or I'm not sure if he's the announcer, but what his role is, but he's involved, and it's going to be an exciting time for sure. The game is Saturday, December 16th, 5:30 p.m. Mountain Central Time on ABC, so big channel, big time frame. And it's going to be UCLA favored slightly in this one, given a 58.2% chance of winning and favored by 2.5 points per Vegas. As you can see, I am not alone today. I have with me Jake from Master Football. This is the third bowl preview video that we have done together for Boise State. We started doing these videos around the same time, started our channels around the same time, and I quickly found Jake. We connected, and we did the first bowl preview back in 2021, a game that Boise State did not end up attending. Then we did the bowl preview last year, and they did. So we're 1 for 2 for previewing games that Boise State attend. So hopefully this makes it 2 for 3. But for anybody that's not familiar with Jake's channel, there will be a link in the description. It's outstanding content. For anyone who's not familiar with Jake's channel, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Well, hi. And first of all, Jake, man, I appreciate it, bro. We go way back. I remember you were on my couch after the Tennessee Martin game in 2022. It was before the game. We filmed the video there, talked about kind of your progression up and everything like that. So yeah, my channel, I'll let you know that I am somewhat envious of you and your channel, because your channel has a much more specific audience, and you found most of the audience. You're doing a fantastic job out there. My channel has been kind of convoluted for the longest time. I said football in general, and I was like, well, it's not really specific. And then I slowly found my way into more college football content. As you can see, my colors of my logo used to be green and orange, and now they are red and blue. I am doing college football content only. I had a little bit of a rebrand going there. I do have another channel that I'm starting here on the side over EA College Football, the video game that's going to be coming out in July of 2024. But right now, college football content, and I cannot be more elated. The fact that after being 4-5 in November, and as depressed as it comes from a Boise State fan perspective, 4 straight wins, a dominating performance in the Mountain West Championship game, and yet again, the thing about Boise State, I'm gonna flex a little bit here. Our worst seasons are better than most teams' best seasons. We are the first team in college football history to accidentally win the conference championship of our league. Not many teams can say that. I can flex very few times. Now, again, we're going to talk about this team because this team's going to look a lot different from that UNLV game up until now. There's a lot of things we have to go through, but I could be not more excited, Jake. Let's get going, man.
Yeah, like I said, Jake has a great amount of content, and yeah, it's diverse, but it's because he has great thoughts on so many different aspects of the football world. Like he said, he's kind of skimmed it down to college football, being more specific. YouTube algorithms, you kind of have to pick one and go with it. But all of his stuff is great. He does Boise State stuff. He does general college football stuff in general. And I am one of your first 100 subscribers on the other channel, focusing on EA Sports as well. But for Boise State, let's settle into this bowl game preview. This is a fantastic game for Boise State to be in. UCLA may not feel the same, because at one point they were sitting at 6-2. They achieved a highest ranking of number 18 in the nation. And then they just kind of slipped off the rails their last few games. They went 4 for 5 of their last games. They lost several games in a row here to end the season. Sorry, 3 for 4 of their last games. Lost 3 games to end the season. Dropped from their 6-2 slot to now sitting at 7-5. And they are kind of coming into this game with a lot of grumbling. The fans aren't happy about it. They're not happy about Chip Kelly. They're not happy about their head coach. The team doesn't seem to be super motivated to play. They have players opting out and transferring to other places. And Boise State's, yeah, they have a guy who's leaving, Taylor Green. But on the other hand, they're coming at it from a much different perspective because the fan base could not be more pumped up to be in this game. And neither could the team. And a big part of that has to do with the head coach for Boise State, new hire Spencer Danielson, who was the interim coach for Boise State the last 3 games of the season. And Boise State's season turnaround can be accredited to his leadership. Boise State, like you said, was headed for spot 4 and 5. They were looking potentially with 2 big games, Utah State and Air Force, on their schedule, a chance they might not even make bowl eligibility, and they found a way to win out 3 games in a row, 4th game if you include New Mexico as well, to win out, get to the Mountain West Championship game, and now sit at 8 and 5, and it's all because of Spencer Danielson. What do you think about this hire for Boise State?
Well, I think that it really is a testament to the entire process and the strength of Boise State as a program. As an example, there were multiple names that were mentioned in the process coming up to their hiring. They're talking about maybe Jeff Choate, former Boise State special teams defensive coordinator over at Texas. He's a name of possibility. Bronco Mendenhall, again, if you go online, anybody on Twitter will know this, that they were following the tracker and they were going back and forth to Montana, or a remote part of Montana where Bronco Mendenhall was the head coach. And you saw the fact that every single team, after Boise State named their head coach, boom, Jeff Choate gets hired. Boom, Bronco Mendenhall gets hired. Meaning that every single school knows Boise State gets first pick, and then Nevada, and then New Mexico. And it was 1, 2, 3, boom, boom, boom. All those head coaches hired. It is a fantastic hire, I think, out there. And you think about that from Jeremiah Dickey, the AD's perspective. He got to see everybody, see their pitches here and there and everything. And he ultimately chose Spencer Danielson. I couldn't be more excited. He is certainly a ball of energy. If you watch him on the sidelines, he's not going to be a boring, a milquetoast candidate. He is a up and active guy, and the players love him.
Well, the players loving him was a big part of his hire. I will admit that I was a late convert to the Spencer Danielson rally wagon there. And I will admit that of all the candidates out there, he was not and still is not my number 1 choice of some potential names that are thrown out there, mostly because Kellen Moore looked like he might be a serious candidate there for a minute. But I said that he was a top candidate for Boise State and that I would be happy with his hire, and I am. And a big part of that is what he's been able to do with this team, to win those 3 games, to get to the Mountain West Championship game and win in a way that was not unconvincing. I mean, Boise State dominated in that game, and they finally looked like Boise State again. And a big part of that has to do with the players that have rallied around him. Talking to a inside source with Alexander Tubner, they said that Spencer Danielson's hire was a major part in Alexander Tubner deciding to come back for Boise State. And I know a lot of other players basically put that on the line with Jeremiah Dickey and said, look, this is the guy that we want, and we're going to make decisions based on that. And you can see players like Ashton Jeanty, NIL money helps, but there's not every coach that would be able to coax Ashton Jeanty away from twice the amount of NIL money he could have made out there. I mean, he made $300,000, which is fantastic for him on an NIL deal, but he had $500,000 plus offers out there for him, and he chose to come back to Boise State, and a lot of that has to be credited to Spencer Danielson. But he didn't keep everybody. Taylor Green put his name out there in the transfer portal, just got accepted to Arkansas, so going to be going and hopefully playing for a starting position for a Power 5 school, but at least Boise State without a quarterback in this one. And a big part of the discussion point for bowl games, part of the previews for these games, unfortunately in the modern age, the transfer portal, NIL, has become who is actually playing, the opt-outs and the transfers. So for Boise State, they're going to be without Taylor Green. For UCLA, they're also missing a quarterback. Dante Moore, a guy who split reps down the season. He wasn't their full starter the whole year. So it's not as big a loss necessarily as Taylor Green, but he's going to be a major guy out for them. 1,610 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, also 9 picks. And then they're also going to be without Carson Ryan, who's listed as a tight end, but as listed as a running back by ESPN, listed as a tight end, some other sites. Never carried any snaps, but he had 205 yards receiving for them this year. He's number 4 in receiving for UCLA. And they're also going to be missing defensive back Kamari Ramsey 40 tackles, 4 passes defended, and an interception on the year. He was second on the team for secondary tackles, for guys coming out of the secondary making tackles. He was second on the team in that position grouping. What do these transfers tell you about this game and what impact that they might have?
Listen, it's just whoever can handle chaos the most is going to be the team that's going to win this game. Obviously, UCLA has the added benefit of being in Los Angeles. It's a direct, they're just going to walk over to the game. It's going to be in SoFi Stadium. It's going to be a cool environment. But whoever can weather those scenarios, again, we talk about the situation with Boise State. Boise State was a top 10 rushing attack in the country. Part of the reason behind that was because that extra defender in the box that would be going towards the running back went towards the quarterback in Taylon Green. It's the CJ2K Vince Young effect. When CJ2K had his 2,000-yard season, his quarterback was Vince Young. If they didn't play the quarterback, then he would go out there and have a big game. We've seen Taylon Green's got TD carries of 70, 90, 75. If you leave him alone, he will hurt you. So that really helped to Ashton Jeanty. He is no longer in the equation there, in addition to the fact that we'll talk about this later, that Boise State has a giant question mark at quarterback. In addition to this, you also mentioned all those players there. Dante Moore, the quarterback for UCLA, is no longer playing. Arguably the biggest reduction in UCLA. Laiatu Latu, the edge defender projected to be a first-round pick, has decided to sit out the LA Bowl. He was a big factor in my analysis in this game, and the fact that Cade Beresford and Cage Casey are going to have their hands full with one of the best fronts in all of college football. We're talking about the number one team in the country in pressures and the number one rush defense in the country. That defensive front is incredible. Him being out changes a big dynamic of the game.
Yeah, he is going to be a huge loss for this team. Thanks for mentioning him. 49 tackles, 13 sacks. So he was kind of their version of Ahmad Hassanin. 13 sacks, also 2 picks and 2 forced fumbles, 6'5", 265 pounds. Like you said, potential first rounder, a big part of their run stopping ability, which we'll talk about later on. So yeah, UCLA, when you're looking at the pendulum swing right now for which team is coming in with a little bit of an edge when it comes to personnel, well, UCLA, they might have the Power 5 roster, but they got a lot of their top guys sitting out. Taylon Green out for Boise State is going to be a big impact. We'll talk about that later on. But right now, coming into this game, the hiring of Spencer Danielson is at least right now put Boise State on an edge where they have kept a lot of guys that you thought they might lose, and now they have a chance to come in and play in a bowl game where, based on the guys opting out and those who are deciding to play, it looks like Boise State's a little bit more motivated to come in and win this game.
Yeah, and have more momentum too at the same time. As you said, they started the season off 6-2. UCLA's feeling just fine. Boom, 1-3 down the stretch. Hurt them. Boise State, on the other hand, start off 4-5, lose a couple of just weird games. The loss to Memphis with the blocked field goal that was returned back. I don't even want. I throw up my mouth saying that a little bit there. The Colorado State game. That is the one that is, bar none. We should not have ever lost to that team ever. But again, it is what it is. But remember here, and again, the scenario is we would be in the driver's seat if, for a CFP, bid or something like that, if we were to keep and win those games. But the problem is would Spencer Danielson be the driver? And that was a good question I saw on Twitter. So at the same time, right now, Boise State 4-0 conference championship game, but quarterback out, in addition to UCLA 1-3 down the stretch. This is a true testament. And this is really a sad thing I'm going to talk about with the fact that the last year of this iteration of the Pac-12, and we could talk about what the next iteration of the Pac-12 is for 8,000 videos. But the last iteration, think about that. Washington State was the number 13 team in the country at one point this season. Oregon State was ranked. UCLA was ranked. They all get to Pac-12 play, and this was the best year of Pac-12 football in decades, and that's a true testament to how tough that league is. But UCLA, man, they are, in many ways, they're actually built like Boise State. The fact that, like, the quarterback transferring, strong run defense, not as good pass defense. There's a lot of similarities there, but yeah, as of right now, the only difference between these two teams, Boise State comes in hot. UCLA kind of on a little bit of a downer so far through November.
On a downer, but not a team that you can underestimate. Like you said, they were sitting at a point in the season where they were 6-2 and had a win against the 13th ranked team in the country. And I mean, even in their losing stretch there, they still managed to go out there and beat USC that had Caleb Williams on the roster, who was looking to be a potential upper round draft pick himself, probably first round as well. So for Boise State, they can't underestimate this team. And looking at the series history, and not that anybody on the roster necessarily remembers this game, but I know there's a lot of people out there in Bronco Nation that are not underestimating this team and are wanting a little bit of revenge, because we talk about seasons, historic seasons for Boise State, how this was so close to that 1997 season about being one of the worst seasons in Boise State history, and Boise State turned it around. Well, a couple of years after that, Boise State had its first 10-win season in 1999. It was the first time they'd won 10 games in the FBS level. First time they'd won 10 games at the FBS level. And since that time, between 1999 and 2023, they've only had 7 seasons, including this one, where they have not won 10 games or more in a season. It was Dirk Cutter's second year. But one of those losses, they had 3 losses that season, and one of those losses was to UCLA, and it was not close, 7-38, pretty much a drubbing. And a lot of Boise State fans, a lot of older Boise State fans out there, who were in there in the transition from FCS to FBS days, they remember this game. And so while UCLA, they're 7-5 on paper, they're losing a lot of guys. Nobody's going to be underestimating this program as a Power 5 Pac-12 team. And there's a lot of fans out there that are out here looking for a little bit of revenge in this one.
Absolutely. And you and I both know the Boise State versus Oregon 3-0. That we love to flex the record versus many of those Pac-12 and or now probably former Pac-12 teams. I mean, we see this more and more now where like UCLA, like you said, we've only played them once before as an FBS opponent, and they won, but that was legitimately 24 years ago. So as you see, though, there was a report earlier today that East Carolina and Boise State dropped their series. I suspect that what's going to happen more in the future is, and Boise State fans are going to love this, more and more of those non-conference matchups are going to be those former Pac-12 teams as they try and get closer out there out west, maybe more G5 schools in Texas. So again, these games between UCLA, we play Oregon next year, and Oregon State, and also probably Washington State as well. These are going to happen more and more each year. And Boise State, they still have that underdog mentality. I know they've won 5 Mountain West championship games and this and that, blah, blah, blah. But there's still people out there who think that Boise State is a little overrated. It's a little bit of a this and that program. Why do we talk about them, the goofy blue turf? But every single time Boise State goes there and wins, they absolutely there it is. Yeah, they can't handle it, Jake. They can't handle it, baby.
Well, Jeremiah Dickey has been a big key to Boise State moving those games west of the Mississippi. That's the focus that he said for this program. So it's really no surprise that ECU game drop off. And you're right, a game like this against UCLA, I mean, this is a potential opponent that Boise State could target down the road. It's that rich California market. This is a good recruiting game for Boise State to go play in. They bring in a lot of guys from California. But some of those guys that aren't necessarily from California that have been on the roster for Boise State are going to be key players in this game. And moving on to the key players for Boise State, the key player number 1 for me is going to be Ashton Jeanty. Not a California guy, Texas guy brought in by Boise State. He, like I said, just secured a major NIL deal, one of the biggest in the group of 5. I mean, it wasn't the biggest offer he had out there, but the fact that Boise State was able to meet that level really shows where Boise State is sitting at, where there's the level of competition that Boise State has coming into this NIL market. And Ashton Jeanty deserved it, because right now he is 3rd in the country for all-purpose yards with 1,262 yards rushing, 6.2 yard average, 14 touchdowns, 552 yards receiving, and 5 touchdowns. And he missed 2 games due to an injury. So the 2 guys in front of him have 12 games and 13 games played. And both of them have more yards, obviously. But Ashton Jeanty, with 2 games less played than the number 2 guy and 1 less than the number 1, is only 196 yards short of the all-purpose yardage total. And if you look at his total yards per game, he definitely would be number 1 in the nation, as he was prior to his injury. So Ashton Jeanty, for me, he's going to need to come in and have a massive game in this one. And I think having that little NIL money in the back pocket is a huge motivator for him coming into this matchup.
Absolutely. And I want to give Bronco Nation a little bit of hope here, because, again, if you talk to people, anybody who's, a college football fan who is an older college football fan, the sport looks differently right here. I want to make sure that you understand something. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Here's what I mean. Boise State has shown the fact that Ashton Jeanty, who you and I know had $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 on the table out there to leave, at the end of the day, the good programs are not going to be ones that are plucked from the NIL and the transfer portal situation. A lot of these good programs, Ashton's probably thinking, he's like, I'm probably going to go pro regardless, no matter what, after this next season. Do I want to get up and move? Do I want to go to some offense where I'm not able to pass protect, where I'm not able to catch the ball, where I'm not featured, and have some, possible situations with my draft stock? Or do I want to be the featured guy in an offense, in a team that, again, as we say, the ball bounces 6 or 7 different plays go their different way this last season. And Boise State is a 10-2, 11-1 type team. Now, again, they still have to figure out quarterback. There's lots of questions with that, but I want to make sure Boise State fans know that. You mentioned that he's your player of the game or the player to watch. I have three, all four kind of different reasons here. So all three are seniors. Okay, I have George Holani up there, and the reason why, because this is officially his last game. It's done. This is George Holani's last time wearing Boise State colors. And again, what he wants to do in this game, I wouldn't be surprised. Ashton just signed. He's going to be a big player, but I wouldn't be surprised if George is also featured a lot. His pass protection, his catching the ball, his rushing. He might not be a guy that gets drafted, but he's trying to go for a guy that makes an NFL team. I also said here, Cade Beresford, right tackle, and arguably Cage Casey as well. Big time players, because as much as Laiatu Latu is no longer playing, I have the key players. Think about this. Gabriel Murphy and Grayson Murphy, two defensive lineman twins. Both Gabriel has 7 sacks in 2023. Grayson has 4 sacks in 2023. Both of them have 20-plus career sacks. I'm telling you, even if Laiatu Latu is not going to be there, the offensive line is going to have their hands completely full. In addition to this, the last one here, senior Sheldon Newton. He arguably also is, him and Cade Beresford are probably the highest pro prospects on the team. Sheldon's going to have his hands full because this team, quarterback is out. They're a heavy running team. They don't really know how to throw the ball as well. If he can eat up blocks in the middle there, they have a chance against this powerful team.
Well, I also had George Holani as my number 2 key player of the game. I absolutely agree with that, especially considering that this is George Holani's last game. And it's not necessarily by choice. He is factually out of eligibility, as he informed the media this week. There was some confusion between whether or not he had a COVID season remaining, but I guess because he redshirted in his COVID year, they doubled up, and you can't double up, and so it doesn't count. So he's out. This is his last game. And I would expect with Ashton Jeanty a feature role for next year's program. I mean, this offense is going to be built around Ashton Jeanty next year, and this is George Holani, someone who's given their all in a DJ Harper-esque way. I mean, every body part to this program. I mean, he has been beat up, and he's given his all, and he's been dedicated for them. This is a showcase game for him trying to make a statement for the NFL and a farewell game for Bronco Nation. So I would expect, Ashton Jeanty is my number 1 key player of the game just because of what he brings to the table. I think George Holani might get a larger load of the carries as that senior, and also not wanting to put Ashton, and that's not necessarily going to be the determiner, but also not wanting to necessarily risk your 2024 back in a bowl game at the end of the season necessarily when you're setting him up for next year. So I think George Holani, 610 yards, rushing, 5.2 yard average, 5 touchdowns. And that's with only playing in 7 games this season because he got injured in the Washington game and took a while to get back into it. Also added 154 yards receiving. In 3 out of his final 5 games of the year, he had 100-plus all-purpose yards. So this is a guy that Ashton Jeanty came onto the scene and exploded, and people kind of quickly forgot about George Holani in a very surprising way. And everybody was like, all right, well, even last year when George Holani announced they were coming back, there were some people who were legitimately going, man, like we wanted to see the Ashton Jeanty show by itself. And I'm going, George Holani is a historic back for this program. And what he brings, his level of skill sets that he brings to this school, he's going to be one of those unique running backs that I compare future Boise State backs to. I mean, he has just combined an element of power and maneuverability that you don't see in a lot of guys, whereas Ashton Jeanty is a great running back, but he has a little bit more of that traditional power back to him and the speed element as well. So George Holani, outstanding back. He's going to get a heavy load. My 3rd key player for Boise State, Austin Bolt, because while I think the running game is going to have to be a priority in this matchup, you are also looking at a receiver core that the quarterback's going to have to throw the ball at some point, right? He's going to have to put the ball up in the air. And you are looking at a receiver core that's been devastated preseason with Latrell Caples going down to injury, and then in the season with Stephon Cobbs taking an injury, and then you also had the transfer from Colorado taking an injury as well. I mean, this was a wide receiver core that wasn't very deep before the season, has ended the season younger and less experienced than before it began. And now your feature wide receivers, at least through the last 3 games, have been Prince Strawn and Austin Bolt, with Billy Bowens also adding in a role there as well. Now, Austin Bolt, for me, he is going to do the best what these quarterbacks are going to be set up to do, which is the deep threat option. You've got a young quarterback coming into the game. Those quick read passes, those are going to take some game awareness that they're going to have to work into that. But what any quarterback who's worth their salt can do is get out and sling the ball deep. You throw a guy on a route and say, go get it. Austin Bolt has that speed. So if there's a receiver who can make an impact on this game for Boise State, I believe it's going to be Austin Bolt. 6 receptions for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns. Only 6 catches, but almost 200 yards receiving. He has the leg speed, and he's also shown himself able to contribute in the mid-range passing game as well, with the additional factor that, remember, Austin Bolt was a guy that was not the starter to start the season, and neither were these two quarterbacks. So these two quarterbacks are used to throwing to Austin Bolt, to Prince Strawn. They're the guys in the practice squad, or they're the guys that are lining up in scrimmage, and they're throwing to these guys more than the seniors. And so I think you could have a special connection potentially between Austin Bolt and a couple of these quarterbacks, whichever one ends up starting for Boise State.
Absolutely. And you had mentioned there the fact that, we talked about how strong the defense is for UCLA, how strong the defense is up front. If you look at them, number 11 overall, number 1 against the run, number 6 in sacks in the country. Their back end yards per game, 62nd against the pass. If they're going to have success, that play action, and like you said, if you're a young quarterback, do we really want them doing a lot of complex reads over the middle for a gain of 7 yards, 9 yards, 12 yards, whatever it is? We probably want those big, tall receivers going downfield, maybe get a pass interference here and there. You got to create plays that way. I totally agree with Austin Bolt.
Well, go ahead. You already mentioned a couple guys, and we also mentioned some guys that are out in this game. But for UCLA, who are you looking at as your key players in this matchup, besides the ones you've already talked about?
So obviously, yeah, I mentioned Latu, the edge who is not playing, which is a big boom to Boise State. Gabriel Murphy and Grayson Murphy, I also mentioned them before. I'm telling you right now, that front is not just one guy, it's a whole team. But the two other players here, they're important. The running backs are solid. Obviously, you've got Carson Steele at rushing the ball. You got TJ Harden. They've got 2 quarterbacks here because Dante Moore, the former 5-star player, former top 10 quarterback of the country, he has entered the transfer portal. He is out there. They have Ethan Garbers, who is their passing. Hey, again, look at this. The similarities we have between Boise State and UCLA. We're going back to the 2 quarterback system, baby. We got Ethan Garbers, who's their passing quarterback. Now, the thing about him, though, 3 years at UCLA, never had more than 1,000 yards in a season. He may break that against Boise State. I think he's got like 980, something like that. And then Colin Schlee, a couple years starting at Kent State, comes over. He's their running quarterback. The thing with this team is those guys are very important. The reason why I have them, I don't have the running backs on there, is because if you look at this team right here, if they're able to get any efficiency at quarterback, they're probably going to have a successful day. But their games that they lose have been just bad at quarterback. If we look at, I have the stats down here, and it's like whenever they lose, they basically throw the ball for 140 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 pick, but they have a lot of incomplete passes. Drives aren't continued. You mentioned there that a lot of fans are grumbling about this Chip Kelly offense and so on. So I think that the quarterbacks in this game, again, this is going to be the unstoppable force meets the immovable object. We've got a running team against a run-stopping team. We've got a running team against a run-stopping team. Whoever at quarterback can be successful, either throwing or running, I think is going to have the edge in this game. That's why I mentioned Ethan Garbers, Colin Schlee, the passing and the running quarterbacks.
I love that you mentioned both those guys. Yeah, like you said, Ethan Garbers, he's technically right now the backup guy, but the season has been that 2 quarterback system for UCLA. Even before the transfer was announced, they've been going back and forth between those 2 guys. Now you have one guy that got the primary reps and 1,610 yards passing, but he wasn't very efficient. 53.5% completion percentage on the season and 9 picks. Ethan Garbers got his chance to shine as well. 984 yards passing, better completion percentage, 66.4%, less picks, 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and versus USC, which was a big win for UCLA, 38-20 win. He had 3 touchdowns in that game. Not only had like 148 or 150 something yards passing, but 3 touchdowns in that game. Now the rushing side for him is not there. 32 rushes for 89 yards, 2.8 yard average. He's your pocket guy. But you mentioned Colin Schlee, 298 yards rushing this season, 8.5 yard average, and 3 touchdowns. They will mix him in. He can throw the ball a little bit as well. He's got over 100 yards passing, so it's not just rushing he's going to do for you, but he is a guy that Boise State's going to struggle to stop, and they have struggled to stop the rushing quarterbacks this year. It's been a trend for Boise State that they have been vulnerable to those guys really since Andiopoulos took over, and Spencer Danielson's in now, and maybe we'll see a little bit of a shift now. We've already seen a shift in the defensive scheme that has fixed some things for Boise State, so maybe a little bit better. But historically, at least the last 3 years and this season, they have been vulnerable against the run. So I love that you bring that up. I also am going to throw out those running backs for UCLA, because anytime you see instability in the quarterback position, you have to look to the running game to try and establish that. Unfortunately for UCLA, they have two guys that can get it done, but they also don't have an established back out there. And so it's fine to have a two running back type system if you have stability in the quarterback position. If you don't have stability in the quarterback position and you don't have stability in the run game, you're really just kind of throwing your hands up in the air and hoping somebody goes off. Both guys have been pretty good this season. 847 yards for Steele, 722 yards for Harden. Both of them averaging about 5 yards per carry, but neither of them are approaching the Ashton Genty, or even I would say George Holani, if he'd been healthy all year, levels of success. So I do agree with you. It's going to have to come down for UCLA to see if this quarterback combo for them can go off and take advantage of what has admittedly been a vulnerable Boise State secondary this season.
Absolutely. And I think, though, as you can see in the adjustments that this team has made early on in the season, Spencer Danielson, when he was defensive coordinator, basically said, we were just getting carved up in man coverage. I was at the Washington game, and that second quarter was terrifying. They just kept on throwing it and kept on throwing it and kept on throwing it. They went to a little bit more zone. They also went to more zone blitzing towards the end of the season, did a lot better job against certain mobile quarterbacks. I know that, New Mexico had some success, but then at the end of the game, it just snowballed against them. Air Force, you can't really compare. They're kind of their own entity. It's hard to really see what you did against Air Force and apply it to another team. But I do think that this team, like you said, the momentum, the energy they're playing with, Michael Callahan declared he's coming back. You also saw that Tubner's coming back. So I like what they're doing here. Again, it's still going to be tough because, like you said, just adding a quarterback that can move is a different element. But again, here, think about this team. A quarterback that can move is a different element, but if they can move and pass, that is the ultimate benefactor. They have one or the other. Ethan Garbers is a thrower. Colin Schlee is a runner. There was a game, I remember Colin Schlee got in the game. It went 0 for 5 in the game. That's just destroys drives. You can tell that that's how they work. Again, I mentioned before that for UCLA, you don't really need to stop their run to beat them. Again, they had 287 yards rushing against Oregon State, lost the game. They had 183 yards rushing against Arizona State, lost the game. All you got to do is make their quarterback beat you, and they kind of fold. In their 5 losses, they've averaged 140 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 1.2 picks. You don't even have to pick the ball off a lot. You just got to make sure that quarterback beats you. You can't let them just run the ball until the game's over.
Well, and Boise State, we talk about a much maligned secondary issue with the running quarterback, but then Mountain West Championship game rolls around. Jaden Maven comes in. He's been throwing for 2,600 plus yards this season. He's been rushing for 200 plus yards on the season, 3 touchdowns. And he comes in, and Boise State shuts down the passing game, 217 yards passing, holds the rushing offense that was averaging 187.8 yards rushing per game, including that mobile quarterback, to only 81 yards rushing. So something has changed in Boise under Spencer Danielson, and you can't necessarily take what you've seen this season or the last 3 years into account for this. This could be a Boise State team that comes out and is able to find a way to defensively dominate against this team. And right now, what they showed in the Mountain West Championship game, if they can repeat that, they're going to have success in this one. And this leads well into my keys to the game, because my key number 1 for Boise State is that nothing changes. This is normal, okay? Spencer Danielson, he's the interim head coach. They win 3 games. They go to the Mountain West Championship game. He's now selected and elected up to the head coach. And I do say elected because the players really chose him, and their position and opinion was really considered and taken into account, which again is another shift in the way college football is being handled now, where the players are getting a little bit more voice because they can vote with their feet if they don't get the selection that they want. And so they definitely had a role. And so he is now elevated to the head coach. The full-time interim is off, but he already has 3 wins for this program. He's the first interim head coach to win a conference championship game ever. And he was able to do that with a program that, again, was looking like they might not even get the bowl eligibility. So for Boise State, nothing changes. This is normal. You're used to being on this stage. You're used to being one of the most successful postseason teams in recent history. You're used to being 26 straight bowl eligible seasons, right, for Boise State, something like that number. You're used to being the program that comes in and plays these mid-level Power 5 teams and upper-level Power 5 teams, but especially in these level bowl games, the mid-level Power 5 team as the Mountain West Conference Championship and beating them. I mean, they have beaten Oregon in this game. They've beaten Arizona State in this game. They've beaten Utah in this game. They've beaten Washington in this game. This is where Boise State belongs. And so while a lot of that energy and emotion and momentum may start to wind away a little bit, you have to understand that you've got to keep that mindset that you've been rolling with. Just because you're now down to the nuts and bolts of running the team and everything's official, that energy is what brought you to this point. And I think that is what Spencer Danielson is establishing. You talked about that guy has a lot of energy. I don't think this is something we see drop off. I don't think this was just riding the emotional waves of what happens when a head coach is fired mid-season for a program and the result of that. I think Spencer Danielson was a focal point for that energy, and we see that continue under his leadership. And guess what? No Taylor Green, nothing changes. This is normal. Taylor Green is one of the most wasted talents ever for Boise State. I'm incredibly, I have been all season, and right now I'm incredibly upset about the way that we absolutely wasted what is probably, I assume he's going to get that starting job. So we wasted an SEC quarterback on an offense that did not play to his strengths. We looked at his talent. We said, that's great. We love everything that you can do. Go be something else. Be a quarterback that you're not. Try and be a pocket passer. We're going to focus on a balanced attack where your legs are kind of used more of a scramble roll or an occasional pullout, and we're going to want you to throw. I am so absolutely ticked off. It was one of the reasons I called Van Diablos to be fired after the Memphis game, and why I continue to reiterate that, because we wasted a talent. But for Boise State, it does lead to one positive, which they're used to not having Taylor Green at the helm of this offense. Maddox Madsen steps up. He's injured as well, so he's not a role player, but they're used to not having Taylor Green. They're used to other quarterbacks running this. They're used to inexperienced quarterbacks running this offense, because this offense is not a quarterback offense. It's a running back offense. Now, Taylor Green added a role with his running ability, but Boise State was still pounding the rock when Maddox Madsen was out there as well. They're a running back offense, and so the loss of your quarterback doesn't necessarily change anything, because it's a next man up mentality, and the core of this offense is still there. So nothing changes. This is normal. Key number one for Boise State.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you and I both agree on this one here, where to Iron Man, I'll let you guys, I'll take you guys through this, because you and I could probably make our own video about the Boise State 2 quarterback system, the misuse of Taylor Green. But you and I could probably have our own collab on that, because you and I have a lot of similar perspectives here. To Iron Man the point here, I'll take everybody here who doesn't know the situation here. So at the beginning of last season, it was Hank Bachmeier was the starting quarterback, and Taylor Green, this 6'6" guy, was a freshman redshirt quarterback, was just going to sit on the bench. He's just going to sit there, get better passing. Everything's going to be fine. 4 games in, boom, offensive coordinator gets fired. Boom, Hank Bachmeier enters the transfer portal. Taylor Green gets thrown into the starting lineup and wins the Mountain West Freshman of the Year. This season starts. Ultimately, they had, remember here, those last 10 games that last season, when in 2022, was Dirk Cutter. It was the swan song for him. One last ride, friends. I'm going to come in here and direct this team to a 10-4 record, 8-2 at the last 10 games of the season. He takes over and okay, Taylor's going to make strides in his passing, because he wasn't very polished there. BSU fans are very attuned to very, very efficient quarterback play. Typically, the quarterbacks 6'1", 6'2", 200 pounds, can run a little bit. They're accurate, don't have a strong arm, but they're very smart head-wise. This was a completely different thing in terms of the athleticism perspective there. So the problem with that, though, is that the best offense for Taylor Green, arguably, was a run-centric offense where he throws the ball 20 times. Play action, deep throws. He's an asset in the run game. That's the best offense. However, Boise State fans are used to very efficient quarterback play, looking more similar to Maddox Madsen. At some point this season, with the defense struggling, I want to remember here, the 2 quarterback offense was thrown into the equation after the defense was ranked in the 120s against the pass. So, of course, a defensive coordinator, head coach, blames it on the offense. Again, we can go into that for 8,000 years. Maddox Madsen was much more efficient from the pocket than Taylor Green. However, you and I both know this, Bronco. We know this again. This team was the offensive line, George Halani and Ashton Genty, with Taylor Green adding a little bit, maybe a play action pass here and there, whatever it is. That was what this team should have been. We should have been pulverizing. The fact that we were the top 10 in rushing upsets me. We probably should have been top 3 in rushing. That's how good this group was at rushing the ball. But there's a lot of mismanagement. A video about a video. We could do that for days, talking about the Boise State mismanagement, everything like that. But again, you mentioned there, the key to this game, different quarterback up. We still have the running backs. It's basically the same equation that it was a month ago. We had no idea who the quarterback was. We're going to run the hell out of the ball, and the defense is getting better. That's what this situation is. Now, my keys to the game. That's your first one. I have one here. The number one thing, though, is with that, thinking about this and the whole situation with Taylor Green gone, Maddox Madsen injured. So now we're down to the 3rd string quarterback. This is where it gets crazy. I think that the key for them is to protect these young quarterbacks. Cage Casey, freshman All-American left tackle, Cade Beresford, first team all conference right tackle. They have their hands full. I know we mentioned Laiatu Latu is no longer there, but UCLA, everybody can rush the passer. They are dynamic up front. It is going to be a problem. Thinking about this is the more sobering thing for Boise State fans to think about. There's 7 total career yards combined between Boise State's quarterbacks entering this game. Colt Fulton has 1 carry for 7 yards last season, and he had 1 2-point conversion this season. That's it. That is the entirety of the experience for Boise State in this game. Hence the reason why I said a running game and protecting these quarterbacks is absolutely vital against this ferocious front for UCLA.
I love that you go with that key, because my number 2 key is run, and then run again. That's my key for Boise State. My key number 2 for Boise State is run the ball. You saw a Boise State team. We talked about this. You just mentioned it. Coming into Washington, you looked at the strengths of this program. You looked at the running back room that Boise State had, the stacked running back room, because it wasn't just Helani Genti. You also had Jean-Bray Dubar back there that looks like he's going to be a great 1-2 combo with Genti next season. You had so much depth in this running room, and a great running quarterback, and, by the way, a very weak, inexperienced wide receiver room. And you thought Boise State was going to come in and was going to focus on the run game. And they come in pass heavy attack almost. I mean, it looked like Tim Plow's offense a little bit there versus Washington. And I talked to Ron Counts about this, and he said, part of it is he thinks that, Bush Hendon combined Van Diablos kind of outsmarted themselves coming into that game. They looked at the strengths of Washington. They said, okay, they're pretty good at stopping the run. There may be some vulnerabilities in the passing game we can go after. And they shifted the offense to something that it wasn't attuned to. It doesn't matter how many weaknesses, I said this before in a video, it doesn't matter how many weaknesses and vulnerabilities your opponent gives you. If you're not adept and equipped to attack and exploit them, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they're weak there. If you're also weak there, the last thing you want is weak on weak. You want strength on strength. You want to attack them what you're good at. And right now, UCLA, 69.6 yards rushing per game allowed this year. 229.4 yards passing per game allowed. The vulnerability is in the passing game, but that doesn't matter. You have 2 raw quarterbacks. Like you said, 0 passing yards in regular game play. Yeah, they got a 2-point conversion with Colt Fulton. We don't know exactly who the starter is going to be. CJ Tiller looks like he might be the little bit more athletic guy out there, but Colt Fulton has been the one that has come in to replace Taylor Green. If a helmet comes off or whatever, he's had a couple of snaps the last 3 games of the season. In fact, there was one play right after Maddox Madison had gone down and Taylor Green had been elevated, and you didn't know who the designated starter was, that Taylor Green had to come out for a play, and CJ Tiller actually ran onto the field with his helmet on because he thought he was going to be the guy, and he got called back, and Colt Fulton came out. So the fans were confused, but so were the quarterbacks. So there was a situation there that maybe the team itself doesn't know right now who's going to step up and start. But for Boise State, it's about that run game. Ground and pound, like you said, dominate in the trenches. You've got an offensive line with one of the most improved units I've ever seen for Boise State coming through, not just this year, but the last 5 years. Going back to 2019, this offensive line has been abysmal for Boise State. And this season, they've turned everything around. You have 2 incredible running backs who are both going to be motivated. Genti just received that money, and nothing motivates a man like money. I'm telling you, that is the way to get to a man's heart right there. And $300,000 NIL dollars is going to be a big fire behind him, pushing him forward. And then George Helani playing in his last game. And then Dubar, anytime he gets a chance to play, he's going to want to prove and show what he's got to contribute next season as that number 2 back, because there's going to be some guys pushing him from behind that are coming in that look talented as well. So for Boise State, inexperienced wide receivers still, with more guys taken out with injury. You got raw quarterbacks. You're looking for a game manager to just equip this running game to go out and do what it can. CJ Tiller gives you maybe more of a running threat if you want to continue to use a little bit of that Taylor Green aspect. Colt Fulton gives you maybe a little bit of a steadier hand on the throttle to just get that ball to the running backs. It's a tough decision. I'm not going to say which one should start, but regardless, Boise State's got to go out there and focus on the run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to make sure we know this. The ultimate hidden secret. It's not super hidden for those who pay a lot of attention to Boise State, but if Breezy puts on 5-10 pounds in this offseason, if you ever see him in the open field, there is not a soul in all of college football that can catch that guy. That is one of the fastest, right? He is the ultimate hidden gem for this Boise State team next season is Breezy Dubar. Like, oh yeah, well, Helani's gone. Well, we got Ashton. We got him. We got Caden Dudley coming back. We got Dylan Riley, a recruit. We got Sire Gaines we just signed. There's actually a lot of options for Again, the trick to this team is going to be the same thing as it was this year's. We're going to run the hell out of the ball. This team is going to be a great rushing team. I want to get though back to the keys to the game with this. And for me, I think that for Boise State in that, again, I already mentioned one of them in the fact that just put the game on UCLA's shoulders. Stop the run, force them to pass. You should be good. But I think a more important one ties into that first one I had with protect the young quarterbacks. For Boise State, a key to this game, you got to create an edge. Unstoppable force meets the immovable object. Both teams win the same way. Basically, they just run the hell out of the ball and they stop the run because Boise State's rush defense is pretty good. I think they're in the top third of college football. Whoever can gain an edge in the passing game, either offense or defense, should win. I think, again, I remember last year, you and I talked about the North Texas game, and I'm sorry to say this, I had a very boring game plan. I was like, just like throw it and run it, and you'll be fine. North Texas sucks at defense. That's basically what I said. This year, trick plays are bombing it deep. We got to do something. I'm telling you, we'll go back to the old school, fire it up but in all seriousness, that is needed because like we said, the inexperience at quarterback right now against a ferocious front, absolutely ferocious. So anything to get them the edge, you absolutely have to do it. Fake punts here and there. Keep UCLA on their toes every single second they're on the field. That's the only way to give those young quarterbacks an edge.
I swear, everybody out there, this is not a scripted video. We have an outline that we go through and we build off of, but we're not sitting beforehand pre-gaming this out. I basically texted Jake before and was like, hey, you want to do this video for third time in a row? Sweet, let's do it. We're going to go through the, kind of summary of the game. We'll go through series history. There's only been one game, so I'll be quick. Key players, get some guys for both teams, and then keys to the game, and then a summary and a score prediction, and we'll branch out from there. That's all the info he got, and he put it all together. My third key right now is trick plays. I mean, it's it's a telepathic connection. And this is why it's the third year that we're doing this together. Like I said, all of you right now, pause the video. You can come back. You sat through this far. You're committed. Pause the video. Go in and subscribe to Jake's channel. If you have not already, there is a link in the description of the video. You can click on that, or if you just type in Master Football and select channels, his will come up as well. Whatever you got to do, go find his channel and subscribe to it right now because this is great content that you need to be a part of. But keys to the game, trick plays. You said it already. That is what's going to give Boise State the edge here. You've got two young quarterbacks right now for Boise State that are going to be coming up against a Pac-12 defense, and you want to find some way to get that defense off its footing. Put those quarterbacks in a position where they can make a big momentum-changing play and have an opportunity to get the ball downfield without the defense necessarily being completely prepared for it. And trick plays are part of that. And you know what we've seen the last three games is we've seen Bush Hamdan unchained. He's broken free, and the offense has been much improved since Andy Avalos left, and Bush Hamdan has been running the offense because Spencer Danielson, he trusts guys to do what they're supposed to. He puts people in position to succeed, says, let me give you the resources, and you go out and do what you've been hired to. I wasn't hired to come to this school to coach offense. You manage the offense. And we've seen a Bush Hamdan offense that has been much more creative, much more focused on the strengths that Boise State brings to the table, specifically the running game. We saw an offense that was tailored more to what Taylor Green brought to the table himself. We saw a much better version of Taylor Green the last three games of the season. And we've also seen trick plays in that offense, including last week in the Mountain West Championship game where Boise State threw a flea flicker for a 50-plus yard touchdown to my third key player of the game, Austin Bolt. That is what we're going to need to see in this game. In addition to the fact that it's bowl season, you got nothing to lose at this point.
Go out there, just try it. Yeah.
Have fun and build a little bit of energy and hype for a game that may get on SportsCenter in the top 10, get the media talking, and use the game as a platform to launch you into 2024 with a little bit of interest and hype around your program. So I 100% agree. Third key play for me, trick plays for Boise State.
Absolutely, man. And I'm telling you, with this, this is such an exciting game, but it's also like, I will say this. When we get to our predictions for what happens with this game here, we have to make sure you give credit where credit is due on your opponent here. I want to bring up some of these numbers that I was able to find on UCLA's defense. So UCLA, number one against the run in the entire country. They'll average 2.3 yards per carry, which is nothing. They only allowed more than 4 yards a carry once all season, 4.8 against Oregon State. The highest season rushing total was 133 rushing yards. They held opponents under 64 rushing yards 6 times. They held 9 opponents under 3 yards rushing per carry. They are number 1 in the country in pressures. They're number 6 in sacks. This is no joke. You have to find the edge. You can't just expect a freshman and a sophomore quarterback with 7 combined yards to drop back 35 times and win this game. You got to do something to help them out.
Well, I've loved your keys to the game here. Like I said, so many of them lining up with mine. But just to summarize on mine here, nothing changes. This is normal. Run, run, run. Oh, and run again. And then trick plays for Boise State. You've already kind of introduced us to it, so we'll jump into the summary of this game for Boise State with a score prediction. Like you said, this is a UCLA program that is going to be tough to beat, especially defensively. You threw out some stats there, which are mind-blowing just to hear. But some cumulative stats for UCLA, 41 sacks on the season. Okay, 13 of those sacks are gone, but he wasn't the only one out there, like you said, putting pressure. 14 interceptions and 13 forced fumbles. Now, only 9 of those recovered, but they forced the ball out 13 times, 14 picks, and 41 sacks. This team can beat you traditionally just by stopping you in the backfield. They can beat you in the turnover game, and they can beat you, like we said, statistically through the air, only 229.4 yards passing allowed and less than 100 yards rushing per game. On the other hand, they're also a program that's pretty balanced as well. So they're going to be hard to stop offensively because 229.1 yards passing per game, 191.1 yards rushing per game. You've talked about and emphasized those games that they've lost have been the ones that the passing game didn't play an important role. And it's a Boise State secondary that, while they are much improved, the blitz, like you said, has been much more emphasized since Spencer Danielson took over sole control. That's something that I even put out there. BJ Raines even commented on. I said, is there a reason that we've seen the blitz package improved? And he said, I'm not sure what that reason is, but that it definitely has increased. I mean, the blitzes have become a focus. And you know what? It's taken a Boise State secondary that has taken a beating this year from the players on the field and from the fans in the stands. And it has definitely improved their outlook overall, because part of the reason that the Boise State secondary struggled so much is that Boise State's been bringing a 3-man blitz, and as great as some of those guys up front are, and Ahmad Hassan and others, Boise State just doesn't have that DeMarcus Lawrence level guy that when you just send him by himself, he's going to be able to go out there and get the guy in the backfield. And these quarterbacks have had all freaking day to throw. I think you and I could have thrown on this Boise State secondary sometimes because there was so much time allowed for the opposing quarterbacks, and that has changed. That is not the same situation. This Boise State secondary last week versus UNLV, or 2 weeks ago versus UNLV, looked like a completely different program. Even some of those guys that have been in the backfield in the safety range that have not looked great this year with the system that Boise State's run looked really, really good. And so I think you're going to see a Boise State defensive scheme that is now shaping to work better against what UCLA is bringing to the front. But UCLA also has some of its own problems that Boise State can exploit. I mean, they have instability at the quarterback position, instability at the running backs position, instability at kicker. I don't know, we didn't throw this one out, but UCLA this season has attempted 17 field goals. They've only made 8 of them. They've had two kickers out there. Both of them have averaged less than 54.5%. They are 1 for 7 between 40 and 49, and they don't have a perfect record at any range kicking, and they've even missed 2 extra points as well. So this is a UCLA team that they bring off the table. We can't underestimate them. They were 6-2 at one point. They had a win against number 13th ranked program. They, even in their losing, they beat good schools like USC, and they've had a tough schedule, and they're better than that 7-5 record. But at the same time, this is not the put together, ready to play Pac-12 program that maybe Boise State has faced in some of these situations, or that they could have faced. And this isn't Washington by any stretch of the imagination. And so Boise State's going to have some vulnerabilities that they can exploit. Their run game is strong. Their special teams are strong. The quarterback, yeah, there's question marks there, but there's been question marks all season. This team has still been able to go out and put up 30 points a game, even when things were questionable out there. So for Boise State, there's some strength on strength, there's some weakness on weakness, and it's just going to be a hell of a bowl game to watch.
Absolutely. And yeah, if you think about this, I think I mentioned a battle of attrition because you mentioned it right there. Dante Moore, transfer portal. Plenty of the guys, transfer portal. Latu, the edge guy who's probably going to be a first-round pick, he's going to the NFL draft. In addition to defensive coordinator DeAnton Lynn has been hired by USC, so he's not there. So new quarterback, new edge rusher, new instability at kicker. We have instability at defensive coordinator. In addition to this, I found this stat. Boise State is the 6th fewest penalized team in FBS. Very good. UCLA is the, how do I say this the proper way? The 101st fewest penalized team in all of college football. So we've got a disciplined team, undisciplined team. You've got consistency at coach, inconsistency at defensive coordinator. There's a lot of questions for that. Again, though, that defensive front, though, it is so powerful that it's still a factor in this game, despite all that instability around the UCLA team.
For the score prediction on this one, I think that we're going to come down to some of those differences between the programs and which team can overcome their issues. Because right now there's similarities for these programs. They both have some question marks on offense, especially at the quarterback position. They have strengths in their defenses, but there's a big difference that's going to impact my score prediction, and it's that special teams. Well, you have one end of the spectrum here with UCLA, probably statistically one of the worst in the Pac-12. You have a Boise State special team unit, at least in their kicking and punting. Their kick return and coverage games have not been perfect this season, but at least in their kicking and punting, you have one of the best, and I'm going to say it, the best combined kicking and punting unit in the entire country, because you have the best punter. Hear that, Ray Guy Award, the best punter, the guy you didn't include in your top three, but the best punter in the nation in James Ferguson Reynolds, who on 51 punts has averaged 49.6 yards per game and a long of 71. And then you have Jonah Dalmes, who's only missed 3 field goals. He's 21 of 24, and he is 4 or 5 from 50 plus this season. Those two guys are going to make a huge impact on this game. I've talked about what a great thing it is to have James Ferguson Reynolds back there, because no matter where your offense ends up on the field at the end of its drive when it has to punt, you've won the field position battle. He could be standing at his 10, or he could be standing at the 45. Either way, that ball is ending up somewhere on the opposing team side of the field. And so you have so much more freedom to go out there and experiment and be risky, because you know at the end of the day, they're going to have a long way to drive as well. And so for Boise State, for my score prediction, I think this is going to be a heck of a close game. I think you've talked about it, some strength on strength there, some key players missing for UCLA. I think more key players missing, more key coaching members missing than Boise State. A different trajectory of momentum. Boise State is skyrocketing right now, whereas UCLA has crashed. This is not the bowl game they wanted to be in. This is not the place their fans wanted to be. Where Boise State fans and the team right now, I mean, they're about as excited for this program at this game as they were for some of the Fiesta Bowls. I mean, because this is not a game they thought they were going to be in. This is a miraculous season, despite what 8-5 might show. This is going to go down as one of the most memorable historic seasons for Boise State as part of the great tapestry of what Boise State football is. And the fandom right now and the team is riding such a huge wave of momentum, whereas the other teams' fans are talking about how they don't even want to go to the game. I don't care that it's close. They don't even want to go, and they want their coach fired. Whereas Boise State right now is hired a head coach and is looking at a guy that they can build a future around. And so for Boise State, my score prediction is going to be very close. I think Boise State wins this one. I think the edge out a close game, but I think this is going to be a defensive slugfest between these two programs. My score prediction, 24-17, and I think special teams is going to play a major factor in winning this game for Boise State.
Absolutely. And I will provide one thing, and I want to see if you agree with this or not. I think that for Boise State, I think Boise State's specialists are the best in the country. I think Boise State's special teams has some work to do. As an example here, Boise State's kick return defense, 123rd in the country. UCLA's 53rd, which is whatever, but Boise State, I mean, we remember the squib kick against Fresno State for a touchdown. We remember the fact that, again, I'm sorry, it is what it is. You have to confront the problem in order to get over it. I want to make sure we go that, okay? But for this game, we see eye to eye on this right now. The over-under, according to Las Vegas on this game, over-under points, 49.5, meaning 27-24 is the over. I think it's going to be the under all day long. I do not think that it's going to be the over. The only way that is, what did I say here? The only way that's going to hit the over is a Dutch bakery amount of turnovers in this game. That's the only way that we're going to have something like that happen. Now, here's the problem. This is where Bronco Nation's going to get a little mad at me. I cannot, for the sake of my reputation, convince myself that BSU with 7 combined career yards at quarterback is going to score more than 20 points. If Talon was here, we win and the over. If Maddox was here, we win maybe the under, maybe the over. I cannot take them right now. I'm looking to be disproven. I appreciate that. But right now, I believe in Ethan Garbers more than I believe in UCLA, or and then Boise State's quarterbacks, CJ Tiller and Colt Fulton. I think my final score prediction, 20-13. Again, that's what is that? It's a touchdown. That's 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals versus a touchdown and 2 field goals. I think that's what it's going to be. Boise State loses by 7. But again, like I said, we get some trick plays. We got some things here and there. We got a punter putting the ball out in the 3-yard line. I'm totally with that. But for right now, I just can't assign a value to CJ Tiller and Colt Fulton. I can't do that, honestly.
I mean, I don't think you're far off base. I mean, obviously, I'm on the other end of things, predicting a win for Boise State, but we're both on the same page that this is going to be a close defensive game. Your prediction for UCLA is 3 points off of mine. The prediction for Boise State, I've got, another 9 points on top for there, or 11 points up on top there. But Boise State, UCLA, it's going to be a close game. It's going to be a defensive slugfest. It's going to be one of the lowest scoring affairs for both programs coming into this game. I think for me, for Boise State, why I give them the edge is because, well, again, I don't think that either quarterback for Boise State is going to go out and pass for 200 plus yards. I don't. I think there's going to, if they do put the ball in the air, I assume there's going to be mistakes, because that's what happens when you guys play. It doesn't matter if they're playing it versus a FCS team or a Power 5 team. They're going to make mistakes, especially when they're playing against a good Power 5 defense. They're going to go out there and they're going to have issues. But for Boise State, the power of this offense is this running game. It's Ashton Jersey, George Lonnie. Nothing's changed there. Yes, the third back for Taylor Green, his impact, his loss is going to be felt for sure. But I think for this Boise State, this is a defense that can hang around against what UCLA is throwing up. This is not a prolific offense that they're facing off against. This is not a reliable, consistent offense that they're putting up, and they're lost their number. There's a reason that Ethan Garbers was replaced by Ramsey. It's because he's not the consistent, reliable, put up a bunch of passing yards quarterback for you. And so for me, I see Boise State with an opportunity to win. Again, also with predictions like this, for me, I don't go out and just compare the paper to paper. I also look at the momentum and the energy and the motivation factor. Especially, I mean, every game is going to be important, and there's a difference between Boise State versus UCLA meeting in the regular season versus meeting in a bowl game. And meeting in a bowl game like this level of game just means so much more to the Group of 5 team. An 8-5 Group of 5 team versus a 7-5 UCLA team. There's such a big difference between those two records. There's so much more that Boise State had to do to get to this position versus UCLA looking at this as a disappointment. Boise State is looking at this as a massive reward for an effort well fought. And so I see, I'm not saying that you're off base. I think that your reasoning is fine. I definitely could see this going that way. It would hurt my soul to end that way. I would not be super surprised. I could see it going that way. But I got to believe right now that Boise State wants to win this game more. And with what they're bringing back, I'd give them a shot to go out there and get that done.
Yeah, and the weakness in my argument is exactly like you said here. If you read the stats, you look at everything, you treat it like a math equation, it probably equals out to what I had. However, like you said, this UCLA team is in flux. We're not sure who wants to be there. People are entering the portal left and right. Who's the defensive coordinator? Who's calling plays? How are they going to rush the passer off that one edge? What are they going to do with all of those things? However, for Boise State, it's like, does CJ Tiller know the plays? Or, does he know which one's the center? There's a couple questions there. So for me, again, I think for me right now, it's like, listen, like I predicted Boise State would go 11-1 in the preseason. Ultimately, that didn't happen. However, I did put money on them, and that did cover. I'll let you know, everybody here. I put money on Boise State to win the Mountain West Championship game in August, and I was looking like I was donating money in November, and then ultimately it hits. I win my bet. Everything's right there. So like you said, the momentum aspect of it, I cannot overcome that with logic and numbers and here and there. We do not know how much UCLA wants to win this game. We know Boise State wants to win this game. Again, I'm totally looking forward to being disproven here. Ultimately, I am picking UCLA in this game, but it's not Boise State. You never know, man.
Well, we had to disagree on something. We've been so like-minded in this video. Like I said, people are going to think that this is just, professional wrestling level of scripted. So we had to throw a wrench in at the end just to make sure that people know that, that we're still on opposite sides on this one. There's got to be some conflict. People don't watch an hour or 45 or however long we've gone on this video to see everybody agree the whole time and hold hands and run through Daisyville. There's got to be some fighting at the end. So I appreciate the perspective and the thought process on that. Like I said, at the end of the day, I definitely can see it coming down to that. Either way, it's going to be a great game, a defensive slugfest. I'm excited for the end result of this game because regardless of what happens, you're going to be looking back on a team that struggled and fought to get to this point. They're playing for so much, and win or lose, the fact that they are in this game is the victory for this program, for this team. They 8-5 record, whether it's 8-6 or 9-5, at the end of the day, that's not going to matter so much. What's going to matter is that this program proved that they can overcome hurdles, prove that with the right head coach, the roster talent can get you to where you want to go. They're in this game, and they're setting themselves up to springboard into 2024 with a full head of steam.
And also, in addition to that, too, again, a lot of things you're worried about, the transfer portal, NIL, what's going to happen? They're going to be employees. I'm telling you, at the end of the day, if you can build a good program with a good culture, like another cool thing about that is whatever the combination is to keep arguably the best returning sophomore running back in the country to make him stay, whatever that is, that means in the future you get a top flight player. They're probably not going to be looking at leaving. Boise State is a place you can keep, attract. You're going to continue to win. I'm telling you, it is right now. You're going to continue to win. Whatever happens with the Pac-2 scheduling agreement, whatever happens with it, consolidation of conferences here or there, this is a great place. I heard it from Chris Peterson. It's one of the few. Everybody says they want to be, program builders and actually develop people up. They want to actually develop people up. Boise State's one of the few places where that actually occurs. You and I lament the fact that it didn't happen to the degree we wanted to with Taylor Green. But again, there's going to be another guy. They're going to come up. They're going to train them up. They're going to improve. We've seen it with George. We're going to see it with Ashton. We're going to see it with Breezy. We're going to see it with Dylan Riley and Sire Gaines and whoever comes in. This is a great program with a bright future. And again, if they prove Master Football wrong, I'm totally okay with it.
Well, whether you're right or wrong, like I said through multiple times in this video, make sure, folks, that you're going in and subscribing to Jake's platform. A subscribe is totally free. You click on his platform, and it's like liking a channel. That's all it means. It's totally free. It's a click. While you're clicking around on YouTube, if you happen to accidentally click against the like and subscribe on this video and on my channel, we totally appreciate that as well. Thanks so much for being with us, Jake. This has been an awesome discussion. As always, we'll do it again next season, 4th year in a row running this together, running these bowl previews. But the third one here for Boise State is probably the most special that we've done. It's also the first Power 5 matchup that we've been able to do together. So thank you so much for coming on with your unique and incredible perspective and bringing everything that you've brought to this video. I'd be amiss if right at the end I didn't do something I promised I would do. A great member from Bronco Nation Updates. Boise State is looking for a gift right now to go and win the bowl season, get a chance to end this Christmas season on a high note. I just wanted to throw out a shout out to someone who gave me a fantastic gift recently. Linda Murphy sent over Doug Martin magazine from the glory days. But that wasn't all that she sent over. She also sent over this Boise State stocking and a great stocking stuffer in this signed photograph of the Fiesta Bowl Statue of Liberty play that's signed by Ian Johnson, Jared Zabransky, Taylor Tharp, Coach Pete, Bush Handon, and some others. So huge thank you to Linda Murphy so much for sending that. You definitely made my year with that gift. Hopefully, Boise State can go and make Bronco Nation's year with a gift and a winner. So thanks so much for coming on, Jake. Thanks so much for being with us, Bronco Nation. Thanks, everybody, for coming out here together. And as always, make sure you like, subscribe, and go Big Blue!